This is a clouds weather alert.
Good Sunday morning, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, tracking Tropical Storm Debby. And as you can tell from the infrared satellite imagery, seeing a lot of those quarter cloud tops really starting to develop now. So this is a strengthening storm, and it's expected to make landfall as a Category 1 hurricane on your Monday. So I know when we had our live update Friday night, it was tropical depression, and it just became tropical depression number 4, and it's expecting to make landfall maybe a little bit earlier on Roy in the picture, but still that moisture is going to be spreading ahead later today. But for our North Florida viewers here, you still have the rest of the morning at least to prepare here, if not even, quite a bit into toward the afternoon as well, depending on if we start to get maybe a severe weather threat in the form of isolated tornadoes. That might start to develop, but you do have a little bit longer to prepare, but it could be a little bit stronger of a storm. I know in South Georgia you have even more time to prepare still, maybe most of the day, really. I'm talking about, even maybe starting to until we get to about sunset, you might have to prepare up in that area. But you can see where the action is, off of Southwest Florida, especially. I know we've had a tornado warning pop up a little while ago in Southwest Florida, but I haven't had too many of those yet. I'm hopeful we won't have too many of those here today in our area, but it's a possibility. As we get into tomorrow, that's going to be a different story. The threat will probably really start to increase on that Monday, maybe even very early on Monday. But as we kind of look at things here, we'll go ahead and put on the tornado risk from the Storm Prediction Center. Tampa down toward areas there around Fort Myers into that earlier on, even maybe in toward Central Florida, Orlando. Gonna have to watch out, and as we get further on here and toward our area as well. But a tornado watch may have to be issued, especially for those areas in yellow here as we look ahead later in the timeline. I know early on, Storm Prediction Center, Norman, Oklahoma, circled that blue area for a 20% chance of a watch. So right now, things aren't too crazy in terms of any type of tornado threat, but it's something to watch for. And as the storm system strengthens, right now, max sustained winds at 60 miles an hour. It'll be something we're watching here carefully. We don't have a whole bunch of tornado parameters showing up right now. Supercell composite is a different story, though. So we're going to have to watch that here carefully as things try to get into play here with this storm system. So I know it's a little bit of a quicker preparedness process than sometimes it might have, but that's why it's always important to have that hurricane kit up to date here in hurricane season, because things can kind of change around. I know around that Tuesday night timeline, it was looking like it would be off the coast of Florida here, but instead things shifted with this pretty quickly here, and we alerted you on Wednesday as we were looking at things that maybe the Gulf of Mexico would be a more distinct possibility, and here we are, a hurricane warning in effect for part of our area. And in fact, let me go ahead and punch that up on our other source now. So the hurricane warning is in the maroonish color there. We're talking about areas in Jefferson County, including Monticello, Madison County, including the city of Madison. I mean, a lot of these areas hit hard by Idalia, of course, closer to the coast where it could be even worse. Taylor County and then Perry, Horseshoe Beach as we get down toward like Dixie County, Cross City there too. Lafayette County, of course, we have Mayo there under the hurricane warning, and then in Levy County, you're under a hurricane watch. That includes Cedar Key, also Franklin County in that purple area. The coastal area is under a hurricane watch. There are some tropical storm watches, warnings, and the like for Tallahassee, a tropical storm warning, and we have some of those tropical storm threats even heading toward up areas around Thomasville, the upward areas around Thomasville and the like, and there's a tropical storm watch for like Stark. I just didn't want to clutter the map up too much here at this point in time as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. I see lightning strike popping up there as we look towards some of our information. So let's see what the current radar is showing off at Tallahassee. I'll pull that on. I have it in velocity mode because I've been watching some wind information, but wasn't planning to pull this up, but I saw that lightning strike up in our system. And you can see a little bit of wind energy, but nothing too crazy right now. Franklin County, as we get down toward, let's see, how about Tampa radar? Let's switch over to that one. You can see a lot more organization here, and even some of these winds picking on up. So again, that's what we're down with Debby. And in fact, there's a tornado warning just popping up here in our system for DeSoto, Hardy, and Manatee counties until 9:15 at 8:41. The National Weather Service there in Tampa. You see that tornado warning for possible tornado located near Arcadia, moving northwest at 40 miles an hour. So I know watching this here, the winds off toward the east and the Hurricane Hunter we're finding wind close to 60. That's what we had that upgrade. As I was looking through some of the information from the aircraft a little while ago. So DeSoto, Hardy, and Manatee counties. So some of this accent over here. Yeah, there you go. That's pretty definitive. Actually, any type of debris yet? Not yet, but yeah, there's your box now. Tornado warning in play in parts of the Sunshine State here this morning. Talking about areas of west central and central Florida with a possible tornado near Arcadia. So things starting to heat up, pick up here in terms of that tornado potential. I know we'll be watching that later on in the day here in our area, but I know this system's going to be moving very slowly, and that's going to really aggravate things in terms of a heavy rain threat. So we're going to be just watching this very carefully here, Debbie. You can see it's off the southwest coast right now, that center of circulation, maybe trying to get an eye there, possibly even coming into play. So definitely something to be on guard for here as we're looking at things, as we're monitoring the overall scenario here. Let me go ahead and jump back to the other screen. I know you can kind of see things. I'll zoom in here a little bit. We'll zoom in a little bit more even, as you can see that envelope of tropical moisture coming into the picture. And then let's pull on our low pressure slash wind arrows, and you can see you have that counterclockwise flow there around the tropical storm in that center. So again, not what you want to see with this becoming more organized here. Granted, I will say that one thing I've noticed is we don't have as much accent on the western side. That might, help Tallahassee out a little if this doesn't, make maybe a jog to the west. Of course, if it really strengthens and organizes, it could, in theory, try to become more of a threat for Tallahassee if it goes a little more poleward in this forecast. Because that curve, you see that turn there, that's expected. If that just jogged a little further north, then all of a sudden Tallahassee could have a drastically different picture, and a hurricane warning would probably be required for Tallahassee and the main FSU campus. I know they're out of classes there at FSU right now, which is helpful. UF, I believe they have another week, so I know the weather right now looking like more of a flooding danger for Gainesville. Tallahassee, well, it would probably be, if this really organized and headed that way, then the wind threat would be a bigger deal. But if not, it'd be more about the downpours and some type of flooding threat. Maybe an isolated tornado, but the greatest chance of that would be more on the eastern side here. So things can definitely be changeable pretty quickly for Tallahassee based on this forecast. This is a very similar track to Idalia, except it's going to move a lot slower than Idalia was. I know this is our indication here at 2 a.m. On that Monday, our center circulation off the coast here of the Big Bend, and by 2 p.m. though in the ward Taylor County and Perry. So not a good situation there. These are some pretty nasty winds in that purple area there. Those hurricane gusts coming into Perry there. As we're looking on that Monday, I know it's a situation where we're really having to be very mindful what's going on in toward that area, and just even the sustained winds could get close to hurricane force. The hurricane warning is 4 here. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking the situation, and you can kind of see our tropical storm gusts possible all the way across north central Florida. But right now we don't have like tropical storm alerts over towards like Jacksonville and Duval County or anything like that yet. Again, we have a tropical storm watch, so 4 areas of Bradford County, and we'll be watching that rainfall threat here very carefully, obviously. So again, a situation that's very much worth being mindful of. Let's pull up some of the model guidance, and I know not necessarily different a lot in terms of like maybe the landfall spot, but a problem I see here is that forecast in blue, that's a hurricane model. So this is, so maybe a landfall further west and earlier on, maybe as early as 8 a.m. around Franklin County. I mean, if it made landfall there, then they'd have to adjust things. That's not so a hurricane, though. But as we look here, as we monitor the situation, I know the icon, and I'll go ahead and just mark this. So right there, that you would think, well, maybe that's later Monday, but no, that's so in late Wednesday. If that scenario took hold, that's not exactly what the forecast is right now, then that would really increase the flood threat over toward Tallahassee. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty for this to be this close to making a landfall, maybe as a hurricane. You don't generally see this much uncertainty, range of possibilities, but right now we have big range there of those. I know as I'm looking at things, I mean, the official forecast has it's going across here early Tuesday, maybe around Valdosta. Tuesday afternoon, you see that center maybe around Jessup. And then by early Wednesday, just off the coast of southeast Georgia, but then maybe coming back up toward Charleston by early Thursday. And Savannah and Charleston, if somebody was to get a event, that even is somewhat, hopefully not to the degree this that I'm about to mention was, but somewhat reminiscent of Harvey that hit Houston, and that probably the Savannah and Charleston area. Based on, I know they're really low to the ground, in some of those areas. I know it's a low country in South Carolina around Charleston. So they could have an issue here that is, of historic proportions, a possibility. Hopefully we don't get anything historic in terms of just an absolute disaster in an area. We could have, rainfall records set, no doubt, but in terms of like a rainfall disaster, hopefully we don't have that here. I can't completely rule that out, though, in our North Florida and or South Georgia zones here at this point. So we got to really be careful. There's more uncertainty than I would like here. There's more certainty than we had Friday night, sure, but it's still maybe not enough certainty here as we're tracking things right now, as we're monitoring the latest on the situation. So let me go ahead and just continue to look at things here. I know, just trying to get the latest information in on Tropical Storm Debby. I know, we'll go over to the graphics now, I think, as we watch the situation. I know 12 years ago, another Debby, came across and dumped a whole bunch of rain. So we don't like seeing the name Debby around here across our area. 12 years and about 1 month and maybe a week or two later. This second, I guess you could say, iteration there of Debby for our local area, So not good. I mean, this name reoccurred every 6 years if it's not retired. But I don't generally see that, Debby then, and then another impactful Debby or a memorable Debby here headed toward our area. As we go ahead, I mean, and think about things. I know we had Alberto in '94, and then we had another Alberto in 2018. But that one in 2018 wasn't that big of a deal at all compared to the one in '94. But this Debby here, there's a chance it could be even a more memorable one than the one we had 12 years ago, which is hard to believe because that was one of the stories of the decade here across some of our area, as I was talking about on cloudweather.com a few years ago, and some articles on there. So again, let's go ahead and move along, though. You can see here our latest forecast track from the Hurricane Center in Miami. Max winds at 60 miles an hour, a hurricane warning in effect from the Swanee River to the Ocklackney River. And that doesn't include areas further inland, though, as we're looking at things. I know, as I was alluding to, watching some of the areas further on into the picture there. So it's not just a coastal thing. I know they're going to change this in a couple weeks in National Hurricane Center when we start getting the inland alerts on here. That's about going to happen on August 15th or so, but not in time for this system, unfortunately. Or at least, right now, I mean, let's hope this doesn't somehow find a way to hang around to August 15th. I was looking at one of the modeling informational, details here, and it was trying to sell, stuff that we don't like. In that, the GFS was trying to somehow have this just loop back around and come back at us again next week, being close to August 15th at that point. That's almost unbelievable. It's August 4th right now, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But that's not the forecast right now. But I know we do have a hurricane warning, as we're looking in some of these areas further to the north. Let me go ahead. I think we'll pull this up again just to reiterate this, because I need folks in the area that I'm going to say here to chart up your devices in that, that maroonish color. That's where we're really concerned. I mean, you see some green areas, those are flood warnings. We're definitely got to be careful with some of those rivers and the like, but you can see in that maroonish color, that's a hurricane warning in effect. So you've got to turn your devices up. Widespread power outages are likely. And in that area, granted, it probably won't be as extensive since it's a slower moving in terms of the geographic details, but we're expecting widespread power outages here in this more confined area. As when this moves through these areas, the storm will be more intense in terms of that wind speed. So, I mean, you're talking about Perry there in Taylor County. I'll move it over here. You're talking about South Choppy, over toward Wakulla Beach, St. Mark's, of course, up toward Joaquina, Monticello. You have Madison in there, Madison County, Mayo and Lafayette County, Cross City, and Dixie County. Those are the areas of greatest risk. Of course, Horseshoe Beach, you're at risk as well. I mean, just as much. It's just, I just kind of highlighting some of the biggest cities in some of these zones at least. But, you have, of course, Steinhatchee in here as well. And we're going to talk about some storm surge potential for you guys here in just a little bit. But again, let's go ahead and get back on over toward the graphics. I know you see how it may not be off the coast of Georgia to early Wednesday. It's going to make landfall tomorrow on that Monday, August 5th there, 2024. So a tricky situation here. I know I'm just going to continue to watch things very carefully. Continue to give you the very latest on the situation. You can kind of see here that wind field right now in that orangish color. That's where the tropical storm force winds are right now. So just hitting the west coast of Florida, from Tampa south. We're starting to see that kind of edge on in there as we're looking at things, that general vicinity anyway, as we're tracking the overall scenario. That's right at the coast, so you're not really getting too big of an impact further inland downstate like we would here and we'll have, it looks like, in northern Florida. But just continuing to track the ongoing scenario. And I know if we were to get things to kind of, track just a little bit further east, and that will increase the rainfall, in the areas here, maybe like further south and east in our area even. So just a nasty situation. You see how slow moving this is. I know in the Carolina area there, especially, South Carolina, this could be reminiscent of the fetch of moisture they had from Hurricane Joaquin in 2015. It was way away, but the pattern set up for a catastrophic flood event for them. And, areas this time, because for Charleston especially, could really have a problem on their hand. I think that was more toward Columbia. But this could be more toward Charleston, and even in Savannah, we could be seeing 2 feet of rainfall here. It's very serious. I mean, you'll see the rainfall forecast in a moment that I'm kind of alluding to with all this. So you just got to be really mindful of what is going on here. I know this is when we're expecting Debbie's winds here of tropical force to arrive. Looking like by around 8 o'clock here or so as we get toward the coast there of the Big Bend. And then as we get toward other areas of North Florida by about 2 a.m., that's the current expectation as we're looking, Tallahassee, Stark, Gainesville, and then by 8 a.m. as we get further up there, into where South Florida, in between that, and like toward Jacksonville and the like. So again, kind of the storyline there as we watch conditions deteriorate. I know in the purple, that's where we have the highest confidence of tropical storm to hurricane force winds. the dark red, just a little bit lower, but still pretty high confidence, and the red, still probably going to happen there as well. So that's, something you got to keep in mind. I would say in the purple and the dark red, it is imperative you turn your devices up. That's, you might even be in a situation though, in some of the areas you actually do have to evacuate because of the vulnerabilities from medallion, and some of these areas do have mandatory evacuations here in play. But if you are staying put here, I know I just gotta turn the devices up, even in the red and the orange, I'd say, just to be safe here. Have those devices charged. I mean, you never know. I mean, you could have a tornado a couple miles away that impacts the power systems for a little while, even, because that's going to be a threat that we'll be alluding to here, as we look ahead and toward the timeline. So Debbie's peri-area threats here. I know still have the uncertainty in the short term, and I say short term. I mean, this could start to, stretch out to, medium, in terms of, that timeline, and then in the long term, somehow to loop back around toward the area here, like that GFS model is trying to show it somehow coming back a week later. That wouldn't be good, but Sunday here, we're watching things into word, later in the afternoon into the evening, when things will be deteriorating. You have the morning, you still have, I mean, through our, early afternoon, I would say, to prepare in toward this area. That means you, if you want to, can go to church even here in our area here, because the conditions won't be deteriorating, too early in that regard. So that's some good news. I know, though, that wind threat is looking quite a bit higher now. Of course, it's all dependent on the intensity of the storm when it makes landfall for areas like Perry and the track, too. But right now we're going with a high risk of wind problems. So, damaging winds, this could be a pretty big deal. I mean, Dahlia, it was a weakening, but still a Cat 3 when it hit land. This could be a Cat 1, but a strengthening Cat 1. And with Beryl, we saw gusts close to 90 as a Cat 1, so the gust number might not be that much different than a Dahlia's back last year, even though that was a couple levels higher technically on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. So you really got to turn your devices up, and it's already more vulnerability there. So gust to 90 a possibility with a sustained 60 to 75 potentially around Perry. The rainfall threat, though, is extreme risk there. 8 to 12 inches of rain, isolated 18 inches is what I'm expecting right now. I know tornadoes, that's a medium threat. They're possible, so stay tuned. I know there's going to be a curfew the next 2 nights there from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. according to Taylor County Emergency Management. And then there's an emergency shelter at Taylor County Elementary. And then we look towards Stark now in terms of timing. We're talking about, again, you have the morning to prepare here, which is good. And even into the afternoon to some degree, you still have that. I mean, it'll just be these squalls on the outer periphery that start coming through, really, today. I mean, that's the storyline. There'll still be some time to prepare, but it won't be, unlimited here in the afternoon and early evening hours. So just keep that in mind as we're looking at things. And until at least Tuesdays when we're watching this threat. The wind threat is still medium. I had the other day here 30 to 40, gusts to 50. I've lowered it just a little bit because of just looking at this track a little further west. But that rainfall threat here, that's something that's, going up. It's now a high risk here. I just want to do sandbags on hand. 4 to 8 inches here expected with isolated 12-inch totals. That's my forecast right now for the Stark area, and tornadoes are possible. So just stay tuned at northeast quadrant at points. That could be problematic. There's a tropical storm watch and a flood watch that are both now in effect. Those went into effect there. As we were looking into the wee hours, really, as we were looking at things that late last night. I believe the flood watch was, and then in the wee hour to that tropical storm watch. So now I will clarify that a little with the flood watch, and this kind of gives you an idea of some timeline stuff too. When I say it went into effect, the tropical storm watch is in effect now. The flood watch, they issued it at midnight pretty much, but it technically isn't valid until 2 o'clock this afternoon. It's going to last until Tuesday at 8 p.m. So that kind of tells you when the worst, the flood potential could be. Now, it may be kind of in the middle of that when it actually is. But so 2 p.m. today, the flood watch for like Stark, but I mean, it goes to a lot of other areas here as well. When you have Lake City in it, you have Live Oak, in it from 2 p.m. today until 8 p.m. on Tuesday. That even includes Jacksonville as well. So that's a long fuse flood watch there as we're looking at things, and you see this rainfall forecast, and it's very rare you see that 20-inch area on this map. That really stands out. Widespread 20-inch totals are expected within the next 5 days around Charleston. That is, just extraordinary, and not in a good way in the low country. Talking about Charleston, you're talking about Beaufort, South Carolina. You can really have big problems there in toward that area. Hilton Head Island, I know as we're looking, Savannah, gonna have big problems, potentially the catastrophic flood event a possibility. Just a little bit less there. You see that highlighter yellow per se, if you can make it out on your screen. That's 15-inch total widespread. That kind of gets into maybe Glenn County a little bit there possibly, and then widespread 10-inch total expected there according to the Weather Prediction Center in toward the next level of yellow, which includes a lot of our area. So, Tallahassee's right on the edge of that, but then you have Perry, you have Madison, you have Live Oak, Lake City, Stark's right on the edge of that. As we're looking there in Florida counties and cities, and then, as we look toward Georgia, you have areas like Valdosta and that. You have Waycross in there, Brunswick, right on the edge between 10 and 15 widespread. So that's the official forecast. I know our numbers, my numbers there, just looking at things, trying to put everything together the best I could on the local impact graphics for Perry and for Stark. I know you can go to cloudweather.com/radar though for an interactive look at things, whether we're on the air or not. You can go over there anytime, and then as you look here, the coastal storm surge threat, I know this has increased quite a bit from when we talked Friday night, unfortunately. Now the forecast is from the Osceola River to the Suwannee River, we could have 6 to 10 feet of storm surge that could be, that is above the ground level zone. So comparing that in Steinhatchee to Dahlia and Hermine, it looks to be pretty similar, which is not good. I know the forecast during that I was looking at some of them, they were 12, 16 feet, something in that range. We didn't get to that level. We got like 7 feet, give or take. So 7, 8 feet, I believe 8 feet was what Steinhatchee had. In Dahlia, just going off the top of my head, looking at some of the stuff there this morning, Hermine was like 7 feet, so that's right in this range. If this is kind of the worst case zone, so hopefully we don't get to that because this is dependent on high tide cycles, and the like here. If we get this more at low tide, and that's what happened with Dahlia. We didn't have the timing set up and the storm strength and the overall track set up in the worst possible way like it could have, or we would have been in a situation where we got those numbers, over 10 feet. In this instance here, this is just a forecast for kind of the worst case. So hopefully, we're on the lower end of that, especially this doesn't strengthen as much as the forecast is showing, and look this system has on satellite would indicate. But Osceola River, the Suwannee River, 6 to 10 feet of storm surge is the expectation. 4 to 7 feet, Suwannee River to Yankeetown. We have storm surge warnings in effect. You have from the Glockney River to the Osceola River, 4 to 6 feet of storm surge. And further west of that, you have 3 to 5 feet out to Indian Pass. And then from Yankeetown, further down into Northwest Central Florida, 3 to 5 feet of storm surge anticipation, 2 to 4 feet even on the East Coast, there in Southeast Georgia, from Altamaha Sound to the mouth of the St. Mary's River. So quite a bit of issues here, but especially in that red zone, that could be really problematic. This is a vulnerable area because it's like, as you're looking at that coast, it's the overall geographic orientation that really messes us up here in terms of being able to funnel that water in. And Stella River to Swanee River could have real big problems. That includes Horseshoe Beach, in that zone there. That includes areas around Steinhatchee. Those areas that get hit by a dahlia last year, not good. And they're more vulnerable now because of what happened. So, this may not, have maybe quite as high of a water level, but there's stuff that didn't rebuild. And, it's already vulnerable there, as you see what happened last year in Horseshoe Beach and Dixie County. A lot of the cleanups has happened, but, there's still some vulnerabilities that could be exposed here. And you have threat for tornadoes as well, as we kind of switch over to that again as we look ahead in timeline. If we get unlucky here, we could be in that, favorable setup for tornadoes in our area for a couple of days. Yeah, that's not what any of us want. I mean, in the weather enterprise, that would be problematic. Hopefully, if that happened, we'd at least get laws where we don't get the tornado warnings for a few hours, because it's my commitment to be on for every tornado warning storm in our 62 county area. I've been doing that since late 2019, but this could be, depending on how things set up, about the most challenging setup we've ever had in that 5-year stretch or so. We have just tornado warnings, hour after hour for a long stretch there that extends on and off for a couple of days. So we'll be here though for you the best we can, but just try to avoid taking shelter in a mobile home in a tornado warning. Even some of those are being evacuated depending on where you're at here in our area. Especially closer to the coast there, that I was alluding to. Get inside a sturdy building, put as many walls between you and the outside as possible, and protect yourself from flying debris by putting on a bicycle helmet. Very important information to keep in mind as we look at things. And we're always watching for our 62 counties. We're in Bradford County, but we're always paying attention for the 62 county area here. But just trying to give you the very latest on what's going on. Trying to keep you safe and informed, obviously, here with this impending threat here across the region. I know you just gotta be really mindful of what could happen here. I know as we look at things, of course, it's starting to get to that time of year. It's a little early in a way, but it's starting to get to that time of year here. August, is when we start to really see things heat up in the tropics. Later August, early October is the greatest focal point. But we have this threat here now that we really got to be mindful of. We're in alert mode. We turned that logo red on Wednesday. We saw the changes. We were on Lake Tuesday. We were thinking we'd probably be in a better spot here with this, but things changed. And some of that model data as we were looking toward Wednesday. And we had to escalate, our level of wording here, and now escalating coverage even more so as we get closer to the event here, as we get closer toward Debby coming on through here, that danger from Debby here as we look toward the local area. So let's go ahead and jump back on over right now, I think, to our other source. There's your alert map with the hurricane warnings in the maroon, hurricane watch area in the purple there. And then here's your track. Here's track of what we're expecting to become Hurricane Debby as we look ahead and toward the timeline here, as we continue to track into that tornado warning for DeSoto, Hardy, and Manatee counties has expired. The Tampa office has let that go. And you see right now pretty clear, across our area. We had some stuff off of Franklin County I was showing you a few minutes ago, but overall looking, pretty clear here at this point in time. But again, conditions are expected to deteriorate here as we look ahead later today. But you have the morning here to prepare, and even into the early afternoon. I mean, when I say, in some ways you might have the whole day, depending on how you look at it, because we'll have squalls coming through, but there may be breaks in between. I know that's something to kind of keep in mind here, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking the situation. I know, now this is something that it's not a tropical model, so we got to be kind of careful with it, but I like to use these in some of these more short-term situations. There's a lot of variability here, folks, in the modeling. I know some of the newest run information may not be in here, but we're just going to use the 6Z here of the HRRR and just kind of extrapolate out here some. So this is going to be the forecast model. And let me move this up just a little bit, try to keep it a little bit more, concise in terms of that geographic view here. I might even, let me move this just a little bit up before I kind of set this to you into the afternoon. So you can start to see some of that accent there. Maybe some tornado warnings in like areas around Lakeland, possibility around the lunch hour, according to this. Maybe, into areas like Hernando County, maybe, you just never know. It might just be squally weather. But, it's looking pretty good here. This is 12 o'clock on the forecast model with Debby. So, I mean, you're in pretty good shape. I mean, to prepare here at that point still. The winds shouldn't be picking up too much at that point. It's still a strengthening storm. It's not like it's already like we've had with some of these like Adalia or Irma, where you already had a really significant low pressure out there. So you still have some more time to prepare if you need to get those last minute essentials here, for areas like Perry and for Madison and for Mayo and for Horseshoe Beach. I mean, Horseshoe Beach, you might not want to be staying there, but, for areas, like that you're staying in, you have a little bit more time to prepare as you're tracking things here, as we're monitoring the situation, as conditions will take a little longer to deteriorate. But you see some of this first banding starts to come through. Hopefully we don't have tornado warnings with it, but it's not out of the question. You see by around 2 o'clock then in towards some of the areas there in Marion County and maybe over toward Dixie County, Taylor County, Levy County. You're going to be watching some of that. And you see that kind of coming through pretty quick. If we have enough instability, I know we're already up to 81. That's one issue here with this. Got to be a little careful with, because we could have a little bit of a window for a tornado threat if we get the instability and the shear to overlap enough here. Since it is warming up today, we may not warm up as much as we look ahead later on with the cloud cover around with Debby. But in this situation here, warming up and that banding, at points we could get warnings. I know with Adalia, we kind of had a band out ahead. We had warnings, a few thunderstorm warnings, but nothing too crazy. So maybe we'll get lucky and just have something like that. Nothing too crazy, but this is coming through kind of peak heating. It's a little bit of a concern. And you see how it kind of moves across, and then we start getting more moisture to fill in. But there's still some gaps in this, so it just kind of depends on how you look at it, because the winds won't be too crazy still outside of the squalls, at 6 p.m. But as you get later on, I'll just start to advance this. You see breaks. The daytime heating aspect kind of plays tricks with us, because you have the axial system, but you're on the periphery of it. You don't have the core of it, but you're starting to get development just because of daytime heating around the low. But this is as we get in the overnight here, and that's when we really start to see things, strengthen even and become a little bit more, precise in terms of maybe being a little bit more organized here, it would seem. As we're looking, this is 2 a.m. on that Monday morning. I know the official track from the Hurricane Center showed the situation here, maybe a little bit later than this, but some of these high-risk models are trying to get this in a little bit quicker. I mean, that might not be the worst thing if it could kind of get it, out of our area a little bit quicker, because, once the pattern starts to kind of really allow for this to stall on out, it would be nice if it was out of our area. Of course, it'd be a big problem for other areas, and it could be worse for Charleston and Savannah, but be good if we could somehow get this out of our area really before it started to really, slow down. That's looking kind of unlikely, and that it would probably still have an impact on some of our viewers across our 62 counties when that does happen. But I'll keep looking at this. This is here 4 a.m. and this is when we really start to have issues potentially. Now this could be a little bit off. You see Perry over toward Trenton there in Gilchrist County. I know, and of course even Horseshoe Beach and Cross City and Mayo, you're all in here. Now, this is kind of HRRR. I think it's taking us a little bit further east, so keep that in mind too. That could be, something to be, an issue here for us. As we look ahead, could have to see some alerts, hurricane alerts expanded further east if that were to be the case. But as we're looking at things here, this is 4 a.m. there, and we'll be having to be, tracking this with that eye wall potentially coming on through there. That's 5 a.m., 6 a.m. You see that hidden a little bit further over. Let me see the official track. I mean, it's not much different, but it's a little bit different. Is making landfall maybe, southwest of Perry, but the model has us going southeast of Perry. And now, that area, that county's not very populated, and areas, especially outside of Perry. But I will say that would make a difference for areas further east that get impacted, So instead of like, I'll put this back on again with the Winfield. So instead of like Madison County, it being, more of an issue, for them, and Jefferson, maybe it's further over in Madison, but then it starts to become an issue for, areas of Hamilton and Swanee there further in as well. So, again, as we continue to watch, this is the expectation here for 7 a.m. tomorrow from the H-triple-R model. 8 a.m., you see all that moisture around 9 a.m. Let me zoom out a little and zoom around. That's 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., all that moisture around noon, 1 p.m., as we continue to watch things. Now, that's kind of more in line with the track at that point, and sometimes things do kind of switch around. I know with Florence, Hurricane Florence going back there toward the Carolina area several years ago. Once things kind of made landfall, you have a meandering storm, it can kind of go off course a little from what the forecast and the forecast models are saying. So that could have implications for who gets the highest rainfall amount. So again, looking at things here, you see the overall process here with things. I mean, that's the forecast for 7 p.m. tomorrow, 8 p.m., as we get here in toward the timeline. So just kind of watching that progressing, as we get here. I mean, this is, taking us into the nighttime hours. And maybe, this is so unclear and it's dark and like, see, that'd be really good to happen, but it's not a certainty. I mean, that would actually not be the, absolute worst case scenario there. I mean, you'd have probably some flash flood warnings, maybe a tornado warning in one of these bands, but you would have clearing across a lot of the area, and that'd be something that we would be, hoping for, and hoping that we don't have those warnings continuously so we can get some rest ourselves. But we still see some of the other models aren't as, good with this in terms of maybe pushing it like that as quick. So that's why we got to be careful. So I'm going to take that off for a second. Let's go back to the current radar, and then I'm going to work on some other model information here and work on trying to get that for you guys at home. So give me just a second here as we continue to watch the progression of things. I know I'm just trying to give you the very latest on the ongoing scenario. I know one thing I want to do, so let's see, I'm going to go back over again toward other mode. I know we're doing this all on the fly here, but I'm going to just kind of look. This is an expectation of some rainfall, and ignore that there. Give me a second. I'm trying to switch some things up here. Make sure I have these right here in our system. So, of course, tomorrow is the 5th, so I need to do a 6-hour rainfall estimate from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. tomorrow. And this right here is showing about 5 inches there in parts of Hamilton, Swanee, and Columbia counties in that 6-hour period. And that's where the highest rain could be in terms of that, as rainfall totals over the 6-hour stretch. You could have a flash flood warning there, and maybe even a lot of this around the storm, but especially there, that could be like a considerable threat one and around White Springs. I mean, it's going to vary. It probably won't be White Springs, but you never know. This is what the model is depicting there. Things can kind of be variable here as we look at the overall scenario here. I know we hope this doesn't jog west with that threat because, if this storm system jogged west, it'd probably be a little bit stronger, and it would go more into Tallahassee, and they're really vulnerable because of what happened, with the May wind event there, the tornadoes coming on through, and back in May, just all that damage that happened. And also this track, it could kind of make it more prone to linger over some of our area a little longer. It might help Savannah and Charleston a little. It's a tricky thing right now that we have to continue to watch. And now I'm going to load one of our other models in here, so bear with me. I want to go ahead and load. This is the GFS, and it's not been that consistent, Roy, with this here at points, but this is going to be tomorrow at 2 p.m. This is just one forecast. This is going to be 5 p.m., 8 p.m. tomorrow, potentially 11 p.m. You see it Roy stalling things a little bit further west there. 2 a.m. Tuesday, 5 a.m. Tuesday. You see Southeast Georgia, 8 a.m. Tuesday, 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m. Maybe if it's over an area inland enough, from the water, maybe it weakens a little bit more, and then shower action at times weakens a little more. No, sometimes in tropical cyclones, at night, you can have the rain pick up. We had that in the other iteration of Debby back in 2012, so that's something to keep in mind. I know we've even had other storms here over the years as well, but this model's showing some moisture still August 7th there, as we get into the wee hours, maybe coming in here in some of our areas, and then this is all the way into August 8th. You see, that's getting, and later on in the week there, so that'd be, Wednesday, Thursday at that point, Thursday, and then this model has it really hanging around, and then guess where it has it going after it? I'll zoom out. This run, hopefully this is an outlier, but you see, this is on August the 9th. It has it going out toward the Gulf of Mexico. This is just one run, and it very well may not come true. We hope it doesn't, but it has it eventually getting, it may not show all of it here, but as it getting in the Gulf, and it has it re-strengthening again as we get to about August the 12th or so, and then coming back in. This is August 12th and August 13th, so let's hope that doesn't happen, but I digress. The one thing it does is it doesn't have it overland for a bit there, though, which would at least let us try out a little, but there's a lot of variability here. That's why it's an odd setup here. We just got to be mindful of what could happen. I know right now the wind's not too strong in North Florida at all. I'm only seeing winds, just a few miles an hour on my anemometer here. And that's good news. At least we're not really getting any readings yet. So you still got all of the morning to prepare for sure. And even maybe let's say 2 p.m. You have to prepare here pretty safely, I would say, across the majority of our area. Maybe our southern areas, just before 2, we start getting into some of the outer fringes. But, let's just say, you got until at least 1. I feel pretty safely about here across the area with that, just the exception of those scattered showers, maybe isolated thunderstorm like we have toward Franklin County right now, but that's acting shouldn't really be tornadic in nature, at least through 1 o'clock, and there's a chance looking at some of the models here, we don't get too many tornado warnings today. Now, we could. It's just what I say with that. You got to be mindful because things in the tropics sometimes don't show up great in some of the high-res guidance, but it was really sending a tornado threat not taking hold into the overnight tonight and into tomorrow because of the interaction with land and the like here with the bands. That tornado threat, with the center being a little bit further away, maybe pretty isolated here, in nature. This, is something though that could vary around some. I know, it's not the deepest low pressure we've ever seen here come across at this point, and it's not going to be the lowest we've ever seen or anything like that. But my point being is, lower the pressure and severe weather setups to, more vigorous things can be sometimes. So, instability plays a big role in that, and we do have that today, though. So we got to keep that in mind. We're not going to have maybe as much of that looking ahead. So there's going to be an opportunity for a tornado threat. Let's just hope that it doesn't really come into play too much here while folks are trying to prepare and make those last-minute preparations. So that is the threat for today, though. In the yellow area, it's the biggest there. The green area a little bit less. So again, it's going to continue to watch things here. Going to continue to give you the very latest on exactly what's going on. Probably going to wrap it up pretty soon. as we watch things, as we monitor the situation, as we try to give you the very latest here on what's going on. I know. Just trying to let you know exactly what is happening here. I know. Got a viewer saying there, John, that it's getting pretty windy in Pinellas County. Yeah, definitely seeing some of those conditions there, be a little bit more nasty. There is a tropical storm threat down there. So, in terms of some of those winds, as we're looking down there toward west central Florida. So, and the tornado threat will be, picking up there quite a bit later on. There's a tropical storm warning for you guys in Pinellas County as we look at things here with the overall scenario. So, again, just continuing to track everything. If you're just tuning in, I'll recap some things before we really kind of wrap things up, as we're going to be really busy here later on, especially probably in the overnight to morning to afternoon tomorrow. At this point is the timeline. For that could kind of shift a little bit though. Again, we're just going to keep on tracking the situation. So again, Debby there developing yesterday in terms of it becoming a named system. It strengthened from a tropical depression to a tropical storm. Hurricane warning from the Shawnee River to the Ocklackney River. 85-mile-an-hour hurricane expected a Cat 1 on that Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. As we look at things, as we get in toward that early Monday there. So got to keep that in mind. And then 75-mile-an-hour storm after it's been over land a little bit, but 2 p.m. tomorrow around Perry is the expectation for the worst of the weather. Of course, they had the damage from Idalia last year, the wind damage, and expect more this year from Debby. So charge your devices up in Perry. Some of those trees that were just hanging on by a thread after last year's storm, they might fall during this year's storm. So just keep that in mind as we're looking toward Perry and some of those surrounding areas. You see how slow it's moving now, and we could have, could even have catastrophic flooding in parts of our area, but the greatest threat for just historic, disastrous flooding seems to be more right now around Savannah and Charleston. But again, that could shift around. But for our area, in terms of charging those devices up, as we're looking at the overall scenario here, in that maroonish area, that's where the hurricane warning is. The purple, the hurricane watch. There are tropical storm alerts that go quite a bit further out. Tallahassee tropical storm warning, Stark tropical storm watch, but it would kind of clutter the map up some. But hurricane warning, that's where right now the expectation to be that you'll be lucky if you have power, tomorrow evening, let's say, in those areas. I mean, you could be losing it, even here in the overnight hours tonight. But that's the area that we're expecting right now. I would say widespread and extensive power outages in terms of the scenario, and extended power outages really is what I'm alluding to there. In that maroon area, it's a little more confined maybe than Idalia because it'll be moving slower here at points, and it won't start out maybe as strong with the wind speed. So maybe we'll get lucky in Live Oak and Lake City, and we don't have to see a hurricane warning issued for those areas or in Hamilton County, but not quite out of the question here at this point. It just jogs a little further east with the overall track. But right now, the greatest danger here is Horseshoe Beach, Cross City. You have areas like Swanee there. You have Salem. You have Perry. You have Mayo. You have Madison. You have Monticello. You have areas down here like Wakulla Beach, St. Mark's, and the like. I know one thing I will say though is the track of where the center goes and the winds go. Not going to necessarily, preclude things in terms of, just a big flood event. Lake City could end up having a big flood event. It's not out of the question that they could get a foot of rain there in Lake City or in Stark, as I've alluded to already here, as the situation does progress. I know Jacksonville could get quite a bit of rain as well. I know they had a flash flood emergency during the last Debby there that came across the area in 2012. So, we had one there. We had one around McCulloch County. I mean, so, flooding could be pretty, widespread. depending on how things kind of set up in terms of a lot of spots getting a lot of precip here. So you just gotta keep that in mind as we're tracking things at the very latest. Again, just trying to give you the updates here. If you're just waking up on this Sunday morning, maybe getting ready to go to church, you should be good to do that here on that Sunday morning here. As you see, this is the wind, most likely arrival time. So really, this is a graphically used to wrap up prep by this time. That's listed for area, though, again, like I showed you in the model, and because of the daytime heating, some of the squalls could be pretty nasty this afternoon after 1, 2 o'clock, or even a little bit later, depending on if you're further north. But this is when we're really concerned, after 8 p.m. Around the coast there, the Big Bend, give or take, after 2 a.m. as we get further in toward northern Florida, and after 8 a.m. as we get in towards South Georgia. So, and highest confidence of those strongest winds in the purple and the red areas. Debby, Perry area, again, we could have gusts to 90, so charge those devices up. Of course, areas like Horseshoe Beach could have similar winds, but the storm surge threat would probably preclude you from really wanting to stay in that area. Some of those coastal areas like Steenhatchee as well. I know rainfall up to 18 inches of possibility, so an extreme threat of that for periods. It's going to be a lot more rain potentially than what you got during Dahlia, so keep that in mind. And again, a curfew based on information from Taylor County Emergency Management the next 2 nights there. And some of the stuff could change though, so make sure you check in the individual county Facebook pages. There are some mandatory evacuations in different areas. Just because we cover so many counties, I can't really go over too much of that here. But I think I'll watch out for the tornado threat. Same for Stark. Rainfall, high risk of that. And where I'm at here with isolated 12-inch totals, 4 to 8 though widespread with a flood watch in effect. Tropical storm watch in effect right now, gust to about 45 though, so that's not something that's too crazy, quite honestly. But if this were to jug a little over somehow as a stronger system, which wouldn't make a lot of sense, you never know though. Debby in 2012 didn't make a lot of sense, but it would probably be a stronger system going more northward versus a stronger system going more up toward the east here and the northeast here across like further over areas in north central Florida. But just gotta be on guard just in case here. And then your rainfall forecast from the Weather Prediction Center the next 5 days. The lighter yellow, highlighter yellow, that's more like 15 inches. Your pink's 20 inches widespread. That's around Charleston and Savannah, and then that really darker area of yellow. That's 10-inch widespread totals that are anticipated. Some of this a little bit, less of a period than 5 days, maybe, as we've alluded to. Hopefully, the worst gets out by Tuesday. Not a guarantee toward our zones, but you can see the orange areas that gets to like 7 inches or 5 inches widespread. So that's like Jacksonville, maybe 5 to 7 widespread. But isolated areas could get a lot more if we get some of those squalls, some of those outer bands, or even closer bands that sit over an area for a while. So storm surge threat, you see 6 to 10 feet now expected from the National Hurricane Center. Now, this is something, there's some of these forecasts, like those local impact graphics I put together. I look at stuff and can kind of use the models and to try to get an idea of what to expect in my own predictions. But this is something that there's certain models for this that the Hurricane Center uses, so we just go with this verbatim for the storm surge numbers. So 6 to 10 feet expected from the Osceola River to Swanee River. That includes Horseshoe Beach. That includes Steenhatchee. A little bit less toward like Cedar Key right now. That'd be more in that 4 to 7 foot range, it would seem, down there. As we're looking at things, as we look toward that part of the area, but it's still pretty significant. As we compare things in Steenhatchee, now the forecast were for higher in a day, 12, 16 feet, something like that, and they ended up getting like 8 feet. So hopefully this is a little bit overdone, but the coast is more vulnerable now. So if it's not, then the values could really compare to Idalia and Hermine. And that's very significant. I know you have to gotta look at the tide cycles here as well, which that's going to depend on when this makes landfall. If it makes landfall at high tide, that makes things worse. Low tide, not as big of an issue in some ways, at least. This came across there. It was kind of a situation where the storm was weakening some when it hit last year, Dow, even though it was a Cat 3, and the tides were in our favor some, and you still see what happened. But again, that was a 3, and this right now expected to hit as a 1, so it's kind of a tricky thing here. This is a strengthening 1, though. That was a weakening 3, so the difference might not be as much as you would think, but storm sure didn't always depend on the winds in the category either, though. Just different patterns, pressure patterns, and the like can play a role too. But just the pressure. But tornado safety tips again. Keep these in mind. Make sure you're staying tuned for the latest and charging your devices, and have multiple ways to receive alerts. And we'll be on top of things coming on the air for our 62 counties here as needed. As we have tornado warnings issued, we're going to be here for you. So keep it tuned to Cloud Weather. We'll keep you up to date here on our tropical storm on Debby here. I know the infrared satellite is actually looking worse than when we came on here an hour ago. So let's go ahead and jump back over to that again. There's those areas in the hurricane warning there, that maroonish color there. That's where you really got to be careful with the wind threat, of course, right at the coast. Surge threat, though, is an issue as well. And of course, the rain threat's going to be more of a widespread thing across our 62 counties. Many of them. I mean, there'll be a few areas, whether maybe on the western fringes of things, like in southwest Georgia, maybe you get luckier there with things in that regard. But you see there's purple now showing up on this infrared satellite. So we didn't have that there as much maybe an hour ago. So that's indicative of strengthening here. Indicative of strengthening. But real quick, I will say, the rainfall here. So like far western areas of southwest Georgia, you might get lucky. Northwest, southwest Georgia, like around Quitman, that's an area where you might only get a couple inches. And if somebody, maybe school starts back in a week and you don't want to be around this nasty weather, or if you're actually being told to evacuate, there are other areas to go to. I mean, of course, if you're being told to evacuate, you don't maybe have to get too far away to escape a wind or a surge threat. You're not going to be evacuated ahead probably for a flood threat unless you're, maybe right near a water body or something where there's some enhanced vulnerability. But, if you actually just wanted to go ahead and evacuate to, and be in better weather in terms of not being in the storm setup, well, this kind of shows you that too. I mean, maybe go to Mobile or something. Or maybe go to Montgomery there in Alabama, or, maybe Northwest Georgia, something like that, if you want to be in better weather, and it's your last week of summer before school starts back. Those could be places to get to if you have the budget there to do it. So, those, to kind of get out of the worst of the weather. So, that's something to kind of keep in mind. Not saying you have to do that by any stretch. I mean, because if you actually were needing to evacuate, it might just be, a few mile thing. But if you wanted to be in better weather and evacuate / take a vacation, Mobile, Montgomery, Northwest Georgia, like around Rome, Georgia or something, could be pretty good options for you. Maybe Chattanooga, Tennessee even. So, again, just kind of showing you guys that there as we're looking at things. Of course, if somehow we have this really shift a little west, and maybe think areas a little bit further west, to avoid all that rain envelope. But overall, you see the total is pretty low in the ward. There is the expectation right now as we're looking at things. So, again, let's just go ahead and show you now. Again, that surge threat, we're watching that carefully here for you. These are still pretty high values, but it is a vulnerable coastline. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. But again, I'm watching here for you the situation. I know, and things do develop as things do progress here. We'll make sure we'll break it in for you as it is warranted. Let me just see if there's any other questions or comments before I wrap it on up. I don't think so. So that's going to do it for now. Hurricane warning for some of our area, as I was alluding to. I know we're talking about Dixie County, Lafayette County, Taylor County, Madison County there, Jefferson County, and coastal Wakulla. That's where we're expecting the greatest wind danger. Of course, storm surge. Some of those coastal areas there, toward like Cullah, Jefferson, Taylor, Dixie, and maybe Levy. And the flood threat does get more widespread. The tornado threat, it can vary where that'll be as well. So I know there's, with that flood threat, we already have a high risk from the Weather Prediction Center, a couple of days out for like Charleston, Savannah area. And that, that could be just catastrophic there. A moderate risk as of last check for a lot of our area. I went high in terms of my terminology for like Starkville and extreme for Perry, just based on the way things could set up there, though. And the nomenclature kind of, it's a little tricky on some of that, but just on the hyper local level, 18 inches would be a big deal for Perry. If we got that, high end total, 12 inches for Stark will be a big deal. So remember, turn around, don't drown in that regard with the flash flooding potential. The flooding potential, if you see a road with water on it, you want to be in a situation here where you just go ahead and turn away from it, because I know in Beryl, even in Houston area last month, it was a Cat 1, only a Cat 1, and folks drowned in some instances because they went through water. They couldn't see how deep it was, and they got their car stuck, and they didn't make it. So you got to keep that in mind. You got to keep generator safety in mind, too. And, after the storm were to move through, if we were to get some of that daytime heating, depending on how far the storm moves away, areas there like around Perry, Mayo, Madison, Monticello, Cross City, and the like, if you're without power for a while, you could have, issues. I mean, generator safety in terms of the carbon monoxide poisoning threat. You got to keep that in mind. You don't want to have generators, in your house, because that can be deadly in terms of those portable ones being in your house. And, the heat after the storm, though, you got to try to stay cool somehow. So it's a tricky thing. Have that water on hand. And you just also, after a storm, you got to treat those intersections as four-way stops there if the power's out with the traffic lights. I know in these areas in red especially, I know it's Sunday, so it might be a little harder to do, but you might want to get extra cash here to have on hand in these red areas especially, because that's where power outages could be the longest in that maroon colored area. Have extra cash on hand. Make sure you have your medicine on hand and have gas in your car as well. Because the gas stations, they won't maybe be able to be open for a couple of days even, and there could be quite a long line after. So have that gas on hand, have those medicines, filled up there for a little bit if you're taking those prescription medicines, and then and have extra cash on hand if you can get it. I know you got a little bit more time to do it there in those red areas, and that's if you're not evacuating, if you're not right in those coast areas with the surge, of course, because some of these areas can stay put, especially if you're not in a mobile home and you're not right at the coast. A Cat 1, you'll probably be okay. I mean, again, you can leave if you want, of course, though, because some trees, will be falling, and that can still be deadly. But again, in general there, a lot of folks will probably stay put, and those are the things that you need to do to prepare. So that's going to do it for now. I'll be back on as it is warranted, and that's going to probably be quite a bit here in the days to come here on Cloud to Weather. So just keep it tuned. Facebook, Casey Cloud Reacts Cloud to Weather. There on that source, Twitter /X at Cloud Casey, YouTube at Cloud to Weather. You have Twitch Cloud Weather and cloudweather.com. So again, we're going to be here for you, keeping you up to date on Tropical Storm Debby, expected to become a hurricane here as we look ahead into toward that timeline. I know this storm trying to really wrap up. I know, probably going to strengthen into a hurricane here late today. And as it looks towards the coast there tomorrow, making landfall, maybe around Perry, of course, if it were to strengthen, earlier on, then that could be a sign it gets a little bit stronger even, and that might mean it's a little bit stronger at landfall. And the way it's starting to look, I mean, they have a lot on the west side. There's a lot of cold cloud top activity, a lot of tropical moisture, a lot of, intensifying thunderstorms with this. That's cause for concern. Again, keep it tuned here. We'll keep you guys up to date.